guys, it's Katie here. If you're unfamiliar with me, I am the Katie behind all of the patterns at Katie DeGroff Knits, the host of the What Katie Knits podcast, and creator of all of the other videos you see here on my channel. Please take a moment and make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out on another one of my videos. And because you're watching, and you are one of my favorite people ever, give this video a like, a thumbs up, and we are talking all things socks again today. Drop me a comment with what you are working on while we catch up, whether it's socks or otherwise, because I know not everybody's a sock knitter. Today is a little different kind of an episode. We're gonna do another sock talk. Everybody seems to really like that when I did that a couple of weeks ago, and it was a lot of fun to just sit and chat with you. We're going to follow kind of the same agenda we did for last sock talk. Today's topic of discussion is, what is my sock knitting process? And I'm going to go one step further and say, knowing what I know now, how would I approach sock knitting today as a new sock knitter? Then I pulled up the brand newest of patterns, sock patterns that is, on Ravelry, and I picked 3 out that stood out to me. And I'm sorry, they're all color work, but they're really pretty. So maybe you haven't seen them. I really liked browsing the hot new patterns because I feel like patterns can get so easily lost in the sauce of Ravelry. Then I will go over, I do have one sock FO for you, and I have several WIPs and my next cast-ons. I have my cup of tea here in my brand new mug from Clayware Ceramics. Isn't it pretty? Oh my goodness, I love it. I'm so obsessed with this. Got it last weekend. Been drinking out of it almost every day. Just love it. So I have my tea here. As always, everything I talk about will be linked in the description box below, and there will be closed captions if you need to use them, and time-stamped chapters if you just want to skip around. So last sock talk, I couldn't decide what to cast on next, so I put a poll up. I put these 2 beauties up, this beautiful blue and this beautiful green from Ashley of Nomadic Yarns, and I had everybody on YouTube and Instagram help me decide, what should I cast on first? Overwhelmingly, it was the green. So I felt it only appropriate to work on them while we chat. And I will talk about them when I get into WIPs. So my sock knitting process has ebbed and flowed over the years as I've learned new things, as I have entered different seasons of my life, different schedules. But one thing has always stayed the same. I do love knitting my socks 2 at a time. I started out on double pointeds. I went through magic loop. I tried all the things. My favorite way to knit my socks 2 at a time is using 2 Chai-Goo 16-inch red lace circulars. I just prefer that method. One for the fronts, one for the backs. I don't get second sock syndrome because they're both worked at the same time. I don't mind splitting my yarn. If you caught last week's tips and tricks video, I showed you how I split my yarn. I do it immediately too. When I'm winding up a cake to knit a pair of socks, I go right ahead and immediately split. Now, as far as toe up or cuff down, I'm really 50-50 on it. At the end of the day, I always used to say I liked to work toe up because my cuffs were never as neat. What I do now is majority of the time, if I am knitting cuff down, I will make my cuff folded. I work about, this sock is 33 rounds, and then I folded. I typically work however many rounds I want my cuff to be, and then I work an extra one because when you fold, you're going to take up a little bit of space. And I just join it together, knitting 2 together or purling 2 together with my cast on edge, and it creates a nice invisible join. Looks better on my wider calves, stretched out. I think a lot of the time a single cuff doesn't look as neat. I do have a favorite rounded toe that I use if I'm working toe up, and I will work toe up when I want to use up as much yarn as I possibly can. Like with my Here for the Vibe socks that just came out not too long ago. If I'm doing something like this, I will absolutely always 100% do toe up. That allows you to work your toe, your desired heel, your desired foot length, which are fixed. You can't use up as much yarn as you want and knit your foot as long as you want. You can't have a slouchy foot. So it allows you to work the leg up as much as you would like. As far as toe goes, I do have a preferred rounded toe. It is found in almost all of my sock patterns. I have amended this to be toe up or cuff down. So whichever way I'm working it, that's kind of what I like to use. Unless the sock pattern has a patterned toe, I will always turn to my favorite rounded toe. That just goes best with my foot shape. Now, there are so many different toes out there. So you can pick one that will go with your foot and toe shape. Some people are more square, some people are more angled, whatever you need. Chances are it's out there. Did start off knitting exclusively heel flap and gussets. Then, this is how long I've been knitting. When I first started knitting, shortly after I started knitting, the afterthought heel was fresh on the scene. So I would give that a thought here and there. But it involved cutting into your sock. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm not steeking a sock. That's just crazy. So then it came out with you could put some waste yarn in and then pick up your stitches that way. Tried it. I don't think in the beginning I was an experienced enough knitter to pick up stitches the right way off of waste yarn. So I just preferred to continue with the heel flap and gusset. Today's Katie, I haven't knit a heel flap and gusset in about 10 years. So it would actually be interesting to go back and try one. I don't like picking up gusset stitches in the sides of the heel flap. I don't like it. If I can avoid picking up stitches like that, I will, absolutely. I don't even like picking up stitches for collars on garments or button bands. I'll do it when I have to, but I like to avoid it at all costs. So my preferred heel now is a shadow wrap heel, but I have also amended this over time. I used to knit my shadow wrap heel. I used to knit my leg and my cuff at 72 stitches, decrease prior to working the heel down to my 64. But when I'm doing a contrast heel, when I have it on, it shrinks this little contrast part up. It fits well, but the contrast, it looks out of place. It looks a little too small, like it should be bigger. So on these, I decided to do a little experiment. I worked the heel at the 72 stitches, so at more stitches. Then I decreased before I did my foot, and it came out much better. So I do prefer shadow wrap heel. As with the toes, there's a zillion heels out there. Find one that fits you. And unfortunately, that means you're going to have to try them and just see what works. So I have finally figured out my magic numbers on a basically patterned sock. I have used them now on 3 pairs of socks, and it's worked perfectly for me. And if you remember my combo socks from last sock talk, I'm just calling them my combo socks because I started with one Summerly pattern and ended with another one. I did use my number of rows to calculate out stripes. So that it can be helpful to figure out your magic numbers. Now my process as far as shorty socks or longer socks, I do like both. Before, I couldn't stand shorty socks. I couldn't stand shorty socks before. And then A good dyer friend of mine, Lauren of Granite State Yarns, put up a test for her Star Island socks. And I'm like, okay, I need to force myself to knit a pair of shorties, and this was the perfect excuse. Loved how they came out, and she turned me into a shorty sock knitter. I love a shorty sock for a lot of reasons. They will use up scrap yarn wonderfully. They use only small amounts of yarn, so I can get away with a 50 gram skein and be good. Now, my process as far as picking a sock pattern, I do like to have the yarn in front of me before I pick a pattern out. I do think there are patterns out there that need a simpler yarn. There's patterns that are just going to get lost. Also, different fiber content. So I definitely like to have my yarn picked out first, then I pick a sock pattern to best suit that yarn. So I am definitely a yarn first, pattern second, sock knitter. I did totally forget about this. I was upstairs and I was getting everything ready for today's episode, and I forgot about John's socks that I'll show you in WIPs. I found these two little balls of this brown caked up sock yarn, and I'm like, the hell is this for? I literally couldn't remember. I totally forgot that I was planning on doing a contrast heel and toe on these socks. So it's a good thing I found it. I've really fallen back in love with socks and sock knitting. I gave it up for a while because I was designing so many accessories. I'm so glad I'm back into sock knitting. So glad. I am limiting myself to, we're going to call it 2 personal sock projects on my needles at once. As everybody knows, I am the exact opposite of a monogamous knitter. I like to have a lot of projects on my needles at once. So I currently have 1 sock on the needles for myself. I'm about to cast on a second pair for myself, and I have a gift pair. So I think that's fine. I think it's cool. Looking back on when I started knitting socks, I will tell you about my first sock project. Oh my goodness. I was strongly advised, not to knit socks as my first project. But did I listen? My very close friend of mine that taught me to knit gave me a basic pattern book that had like a variety of different projects in it. Some double pointed needles, some sock yarn. He gave me a bunch of random yarn to start with. I didn't realize that I probably shouldn't knit socks with 100% wool yarn, but I did it anyway. Couldn't understand why it was so tight and it was so unpleasant to knit with, and why the socks were turning out so small, because it was felting as I was knitting it. So I wish I would have kept them. I really wish I could have channeled, future Katie and realized that it would have been great to look back on them. Regardless of how your first projects turn out, keep them for posterity's sake. It will be interesting to look back on, because I can guarantee it, you're going to grow as a knitter, and it's really cool to look back on where you started. But if I were to start knitting today, and what advice I would give, so many times I see people say, don't pick a project that's too complicated, or you absolutely have to start out with a vanilla sock. You absolutely have to start out this way. There's no right way to start out. If you're an adventurous person and you learn things easily and you like to challenge yourself, go for the gusto. My biggest advice, pick a project that you want that finished object of. If it's your first pair of socks as a cabled sock, great. Can you work a cable, or do you think you can learn how to work a cable? Then go for it. I do recommend picking a pattern where there's plenty of project pages that say that pattern is easy to work up, or the instructions are very clear. That's my only advice. It doesn't have to have thousands of projects. It doesn't have to have 10 projects. As long as you see several projects that say, instructions are clear, go for it. Pick a project and a pattern that you want that finished object of, regardless of how complicated it is. We are human bodies, that there are many different shapes and sizes to us. Unfortunately, you are going to have to find heels, toes, and cuffs that fit you best. So my best advice for that, just pick a pattern and knit it. Whatever toe it has, whatever heel it has, whatever cuff it has, knit it to pattern and see how that works out. See how that fits you and go from there. If I knit that up and I don't like it, I don't like the process or I don't like the fit, move on from there. But at least you tried it and you know. But do just know that there's so many other options out there for you. And don't forget, you can go up a needle size, down a needle size, increase your stitches, decrease your stitches. I would recommend though, for your very first pair of socks, I would knit them one at a time. Several different reasons. Yes, you're gonna have to go knit a whole second sock afterwards, but you're trying out for the first time a heel, a toe, and a cuff. And if something just does not work out, you now have only knit one sock. You can rip it out, or you could just say screw it and leave it, and I've got plenty of yarn to knit a whole pair of socks, so now I'm gonna fix it. So you've only knit one sock as opposed to two when you're figuring things out. So there's so many different ways to knit socks. Really, it's really pretty cool. Knitting and crocheting is really such a cool hobby because you can really customize it to you and your needs and your desires, likes, and all that jazz. So those are my tips for beginners. We're gonna move on to hot new patterns. So we're on to hot new patterns now, and I really enjoy doing this because as I mentioned earlier, I feel like patterns can get so easily lost in Ravelry. If they are not uber popular or by an uber popular designer and they're on like the top 20, I don't see them ever. So I really kind of actually really like this, getting in a routine of pulling up different categories of patterns and hitting newly added to Ravelry and just browsing through those. So yesterday, I made a brand new favorites bundle for our Sock Talk patterns. And I made it 2026 because I'll just make a new bundle each year. And that way I will just add to it. And I will have that bundle linked down below. I did make a boo-boo earlier. I told you that they were all color work. One is not color work. Two are color work, one is not. One has a fun new heel that I want to try. Really pretty textural pattern on it. My first pattern on here, and I'm going to be reading off of my phone, is the Austin Acre Socks by Mackenzie Alvarez. I did see these on Instagram because I do follow her, and they are part of a Summer of Socks Volume 2 Into the Garden. It is part of an ebook by her. I think, now she used self-striping yarn for this. I really want to use a Schopenwool Zauberball for this. I really want to make these. I think that they would be so fun. And I have yet to conquer a colorwork sock pattern. As everybody knows, my multiple failed attempts at the herding cat socks. These are definitely going to go on my sock plan queue, but they look really fun. You can use self-striping. You can use a gradient, hand spun, or you could just use two colors. I think they're really fun. It looks like a pretty basic color work pattern in that you're not carrying any real wide floats. And I do love the color work on the bottom of the foot and how it's different from the top of the foot. So, and it is a heel flap and gusset, which I have not knit in forever, but I think it looks really good on this sock. So I think I would definitely keep that. And I think it would be fun to knit a heel flap and gusset again. So these are definitely a hot new pattern that's going into my sock plans. Next up is another color work pattern. These are the Marcella socks by Virginia Sattler Reamer. I really like these. I think they're so sweet and pretty. And the color work is only on the cuff. So I think if I just went up a needle size and with the increased stitch count, I think I would be good with those. And the rest of it is a pretty textural pattern. I probably would swap out the heel flap and gusset on these for a shadow wrap heel. And because the color work is only on the cuff portion, you could use remnants for this. That would be really fun. Or make your own fade Ooh, that would be even more fun if you've got some minis or maybe some leftovers from an advent calendar that fades. That would be fun too. I can definitely see myself making these though. Really, really like those though. So another hot new release. Now comes the only non-color work pattern in my hot new picks for sock patterns. These are the hologram socks by Amanda Schwabi. So sorry if I'm butchering that name. So sorry. These look like they have such a fun texture to them and a really neat looking heel. Very, very neat. She calls them the Acnidia heels. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right either. She apparently has a Heels for Days Sock Club ebook as well with a different version of this heel. It looks really interesting to me. And the slip stitch textural pattern, I need to try this. I really, really do. I have so many beautiful sock yarns that I need to use up. So these will definitely be going on my sock plans. I just think it's so fun. And she knit them up in a, I would say, not a highly variegated yarn, but I don't think it's really a lightly variegated either. It's kind of in between and it still looks good. So I think you could really use any yarn with it. Definitely want to try that heel. Definitely want to try that textural pattern because I am all about the texture. Now we're on to FOs. I have one sock FO for you, and I haven't shown this on a regular podcast either. They're not blocked yet. I haven't blocked them. I don't know why either. I was like, they've just been sitting on blockers in my kitchen. But these are the Dragonfly Socks by Leah Gibson of Leah Loves to Knit podcast. I've wanted to knit these forever. I grabbed the pattern as soon as it came out. I used some Deep Stash. The main color is Peepaloo Fields in the colorway Crackle. And then I dug out some Row 1 minis from Solstice Fiber in this purple and this peach. I don't know what the names are. I lost the little bands that they come with, but they were perfect. And I did swap them, did swap the color of the heels and the toes and the cuffs. And I think that looks really sweet and fun. This stitch pattern is so easy to memorize and so intuitive. Shows off a lightly speckled yarn or any yarn so well. And on these, I showed you earlier, are we comfortable, Micah? Like, gosh, he's just here laying down. So if you see me doing something, I'm rubbing his little belly and he's just, oh my goodness. Oh, the dog. He really enjoys it that I'm sitting on the floor. But anyway, I did work these cuff down and I kept the pattern. I kept the 1 by 1. I resisted the urge to fold them. I left it as is, but I did change the heel to a shadow wrap heel and I did work it over 72 stitches and then decreased. I did like this a little bit more for a contrast shadow wrap. I can see it a little more. Gives me teeny tiny bit more space, which is fine. It's definitely not saggy. It really wasn't too tight before, but just tweaking my perfect socks just a little bit more. But I love these socks. They are so fun. So fun. Oh my goodness. I really do like these. I do have to block them. I don't really think they need blocking, but yeah. I like them. They're sweet. They're fun. I have a bunch of my main color left over, so I can easily make a second pair of socks. So I love these guys. So these are my only sock FO since last sock talk. But I think that's pretty good because last sock talk I was working on these. So maybe next sock talk these will be an FO and then I'll have new WIPs. So I knit these for, which I need to submit my entries for. Need to do that. Leah is running a Seaside Sock Along that runs until July 31st. What is today? Today is the 23rd. I need to submit my entries. These are another entry that I have for her Seaside Sock Along. But this, again, is the Dragonfly pattern by Leah Gibson of Leah Loves to knit. Okay, on to sock whips. I was working on this during the video, and I briefly showed it to you earlier, but these are my shades of Pemberley Nomadic Yarns socks. I did use her Brit sock base for these. That's my favorite of her bases, although I have used them all. I just did cast it on 72 stitches, knit 3, purl 1. I did 33 rounds for the cuff before I tacked it down, and then just continued on in the knit 3, purl 1. I was kind of thinking I was going to do a stockinette on these, but I really like that 3-1 rib. So I am just continuing down. I absolutely love this colorway and how they're knitting up, and their smaller stripes. There's so many colors, so pretty. And I just found my contrast color for heels and toes, which is funny because I totally forgot that I had caked up a contrast color for these. And I tried them on this morning, and I was like, guesstimating I have about this much to go down here before I want to start my heel. So it's a good thing I found my accent heel color. Whoopsie. But working on those. Then this was in my plans last time we had sock talk. Me making John a Christmas present. And this is how far I got. This is it. I just started the toe. I really need to finish the toe so I can just work. These are going to be the Season Socks by Summerlee, and the yarn is a breaking yarn in the colorway Heisenberg. And McKaylee had sent along this little blue crystal stitch marker, and of course I have my Walter White from Kelsey of the Lowe's Charm Co. Had to put all the Breaking Bad love on these bad boys. But this, yeah, sad little cast on start. But it's a start. It's something. I really do need to pick these back up. But these have just taken all my time. And before that, I was enamored with my Dragonfly socks. So they're a Christmas present. So I have until December 25th, right? I shouldn't put them off too long, but I am working them 2 at a time. I did split my cake beforehand. Now, next sock cast on. I do have a free pair of sock needles for myself. I caked up Sunset Cocktails, and this is in Twisty Sock by Nomadic Yarns. I did just get a 50-gram skein. And I want to make another pair. Oops, I just chucked them. I do want to make another pair of boardwalk socks from Leah Gibson. I did my pair earlier, which I think they're up here. Yes, right here. These were my boardwalk socks that I made earlier this year, and I loved them. And I want to knit them up in self-striping. I think it would be really fun. And I think the pattern would look really cute too. And I love how these fit. So I'm going to knit up some boardwalk socks and Sunset Cocktails. I think this is really, you know, in her samples, it was just bright and fun. And it looks totally summer cabana vibes. In person, I'm looking at these, and I don't know why, but it screams Christmas to me. Either way, I don't care. They're going to be fun, they're going to be bright, they're going to be self-striping, and they're going to be shorties, so they're going to go quick. These are my next sock cast on. So I hope that you enjoyed another little sock chat, a little sock talk. I did, and I really kind of like chatting about socks again. I feel like knitting, you can knit anything. You can knit hats, mitts, gloves, garments. It doesn't even matter. Socks, who cares? But I feel like socks do have their own place. So I think we're definitely going to continue the sock talk in the future. And if you've been following along in my videos, I have been keeping a huge secret. Maybe you picked it out in this video, but I did flash something that is a part of that big, huge secret. I will chat a little bit more about it in next week's regular podcast episode. I think I will absolutely be ready to do a little preview, an official preview. But if you caught it, you can drop a comment down below. I'll tell you if you're right or not. But John and myself are so excited for this. A little business venture that we are starting. We have been putting so much thought and time and energy into this, and we're really proud of it. And yeah, so next week's podcast, there will be a little official preview, and we'll be closer to announcing when things will go live and whatnot. But anyway, all that aside, I'm probably going to go work on these, but I really should finish these toes. Just get the toe done, because then it's just foot. You know, they say sleeve island with garments. It's foot island for me. I don't know why, but the foot part of my socks take the longest. I really need to go finish these toes, but I really want to just knit stripes. Oh my goodness. All right, I'm out of here, guys. So don't forget to tune in next time to see what Katie knits.